So now that you have what I like to call the meat and potatoes of the law of attraction, let's get into some deeper, finer points. Number one, I believe that every single one of us have what I like to call a core self. Now, before I go any further, this is one of those subjects that every single human being feels a little differently about. So just as I mentioned in the introduction, whatever feels good to you, whatever resonates with you about this section, then great, roll with it. But if there's anything that I share in this particular section that just doesn't feel right to you, by all means, leave it out. You can still work with the law of attraction and allowing without completely embracing every aspect of what I have to share in this section. So I'm going to share what I've come to know, as any teacher really can do, and see what resonates with you and see if this gives you an even greater sense of well-being. So I'd like to ask you to hold your breath. That's right. Hold your breath. Let's see how long you can do that. Okay, so I'm not going to stand here and wait because some of you guys might be trained divers or have trained yourself to be able to hold your breath for an extended period of time. But have you noticed there always comes a point where your body says, that's enough. And boom, you start breathing again. By the way, have you also noticed that when you sleep at night, somehow you keep receiving oxygen and your blood still is moving through your body and your heart is still functioning and all of these processes are still happening without you thinking about them? You know what? Let me ask you this. As ADD as so many human beings are, could you imagine what our lives would be like if we had to remember to beat our heart, to breathe, to allow our nervous system to do what it does, to tell our bodies when to eliminate things? We would die in 3 seconds flat. So, based on this physical stuff alone, what science has called our autonomic system, to me, it just makes sense that there's a bigger picture that's keeping things flowing and that's continuing to help keep things in a state of well-being. So with all this being said, I believe that there's an aspect of us that continues to be part of a bigger picture of life, an aspect of us that continues to get the bird's eye view. And this is something that Abraham Hicks, for those of you that are familiar with their work, calls source or source energy. I personally call it our core self, but this aspect of us has been given many different names and many different identities. And frankly, how you choose to view this is a very, very personal thing. But for me, I've seen more than enough evidence in my own life to know that there's got to be more than just this basic 3D version of me. Because there are things that have shown up in my life, solutions, people, ideas, opportunities, experiences that there is no way I could have physically planned and orchestrated these things to happen at these perfect times. So let me give you a little example. An analogy that serves me well is I like to think of my core self as kind of, and myself that I know today, it's kind of like a pilot and a co-pilot. So let's just say you and your co-pilot decide to go off on an adventure and you're going to fly and explore the universe. So the you that you know gets to drive the airplane. And the you that you know, as you're cruising around and you're spotting different things that you see that look like, ooh, that looks pretty cool. I think I want to explore that. Ooh, I think I really would love to go that way. Your co-pilot, who by the way is right beside you, but you may not be able to physically see because you got a little partition there, actually goes through like a GPS, has like a map that can take a look and say, okay, you've decided that you want to go this way and you've decided you want to experience this. So here's the best way to go and the most scenic route to get there. So, even though there's that partition in between the two of you, you have this really cool connection because one of the ways that your core self, your co-pilot, lets you know if you're moving toward what you want is you physically feel good. I mentioned this in the last segment, but here's another thing. The next manifestation of that physical response in your body is now an emotion. That's right. Emotions are actually manifestations. So your co-pilot right here has just let you know that however you're steering your airplane at the moment, you're going toward what you really truly want. And so you feel good. Now, when you start to go away from what you truly want, your core self isn't there throwing knives through the partition or trying to beat you up or anything. They're just basically sending the signal saying, actually, you would want to go this way. Your joy is this way. The things you want are this way. So what happens is the farther we get off of that mark, the less we're paying attention to that guidance, the less good we feel. And if we continue to go down that road, well, ultimately things start to manifest in our life. So cell phones, every single one of us on this planet, and especially if you're watching this online, I would imagine that you probably have a cell phone. And the thing is, your cell phone can only work if it can communicate with a tower of some kind. So the thing is, when we resist our well-being, when we don't listen to that guidance coming from within ourselves, it's like going down into a tunnel and with our cell phone to where it's cutting off that communication. And maybe it's one of those cases where you're like, that you're only getting little bits and pieces, but your core self, even when you go completely into the darkness, into a tunnel, and completely shut things down, if you will, your core self, your co-pilot, never stops guiding you. Now, here's another really cool thing about your core self. Any single one of us, even when there's major stuff going on in our lives, do not ever stay in a mode of resistance and negative emotion 24/7. There's always a time when something distracts us. Squirrel! Shiny! Something takes our attention away from those thoughts that stuff that we're miring in the moment. Or we go to sleep. Or we take a nap. Or we pet the cat or the dog. Or the kids come in and they're laughing and they're smiling. When we have those moments, that's when your co-pilot can actually help to steer the plane for a little while. It's kind of like your autopilot type thing. So here's some really, really good news. Your core self is also a part of your point of attraction. So no matter what crazy, I call it crackhead stuff you might be doing in the moment, again, just because you're out of alignment, you're not in your groove, whatever, no matter how far off you may go, no matter what your point of attraction is otherwise, when you chill for just a moment, and we'll talk about that later, but when you get off those negative subjects for just a short time, your core self's point of attraction kicks in. So your core self can actually still help to lead you toward well-being and joy even when you have been resisting it.